Hi, I'm Bonnie Barker with BonnieBabeCrochet.com, and you've come to video number 2 of the Yule Tree Throw. Okay, at this point, your throw should be about this size, and you should have completed one Yule tree or Christmas tree. And at this point, so you should have been done through row number 35. Okay, now I'm going to give you some special directions so that I don't have to go on and so that you're not having to be tethered to this video series, you know, minute by minute, row by row, stitch by stitch. Okay, the beginning of the second tree, if you're looking at the pattern with me, starts with row 36 and ends with row 51. Okay, and that includes the repeat stitches without the specific tree directions here. Okay, so what we're going to do for the second tree and beyond is I'm going to give you the instructions for the tree section just as a reminder and so that it's easier for you to understand. I would also encourage you to go through the pattern stitch by stitch so that you can keep track and underline just the portion that refers to the tree in the center. Okay, and the reason for that is these stitches here, the wheat stitches on each side and the honeycomb stitches and the ribbing will all be the same throughout until the last 7 rows of this throw. Okay, so why do we have all these other row numbers here? Let me explain why, and why I'm going to simplify and free you from this. As long as you're understanding how these stitches, this is actually the main thing that's different, is the honeycomb. And as the stitch goes out, up, and then in, up, out, up, and in, and then up, as each row progresses. The only difference is when you begin each tree, you might be going out instead of going in, or going in instead of going out on those stitches. So there's really not a big need for me to guide you through that every step of the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say go ahead and repeat. I'm going to give you the information that you need in a very condensed format for rows 36 through 51. Okay, so what I'm going to give you only the tree portion so that you can follow along with that. But go ahead and maintain the pattern stitch here. Okay, I hope that's not too confusing for some of you. If it is, I apologize. I'm just assuming that if you've gone all the way through 35 rows of this, that you've got these stitches down and there's no need for me to go on and on about it. Okay, so to try to condense the directions for you, we're going to go and work rows 36 through 51 to form the second tree. And then after that, for the third and fourth trees, you're going to go to rows 8 through 51. That is video number 1 and video number 2 one more time. And then for the fifth tree, which is the last Yule tree, you'll repeat rows 8 through 35 one more time. Okay, so if you go ahead and work that, and then I can see you in video number 3 where we will finish the ribbing portion, which is going to be very easy. So this is a lot of work. It's much more than 1 week's worth, I promise, but I wanted to give a complete, thorough assignment. And don't forget, stay tuned for the center portion. I'm going to have that up right next. So I'll guide you through the tree portion of tree number 2. Okay? Okay, now it's time. We've come to our stitch markers. Time to change out the crochet hooks for the smaller hook. And I'm going to go ahead and take this stitch marker out. If I can figure out how to do it. And there we go. And the directions for this section of row 14 say to double crochet in the next 9 double crochets. So again, we're working through the loops on this middle section. I'm going to go ahead and put that stitch marker right back in because that does keep me on the course for changing the hook. Okay, so go ahead and work 9 double crochets. After working those 9 double crochets, we're going to work 3 front post double crochets. And the reason we're doing that is we are beginning to form the trunk of the Christmas tree. So go ahead and do 3 front post double crochets. And after we do that, make sure you skip 3 stitches in the back so that you don't skip any stitches. So 1, 2, 3. And then starting in the next stitch, we're going to crochet 9 more double crochets all the way until we get to the stitch marker. Now that we've come to the stitch marker, we're going to go ahead and take that out, and following the directions for row 15, I'm going to double crochet in the next 9 stitches, working through the top loops for the center section. After crocheting those 9 stitches, we're going to work back post double crochets in the next 3 stitches. Now these are the stitches that we worked front post double crochets in the row before this. Okay, so that's on those 3 stitches only, and then we're going to go back to working in the top loop, and also make sure that you skip 3 stitches here, 1, 2, 3, so that we're not double dipping in any of them, and then double crochet in the next 9 stitches. Okay, now we have come to our stitch marker, and honestly this is where the fun begins. So let's go ahead and change hooks, because that's what that stitch marker is there for, is to remind us to change the smaller size hook size. Now this is where we actually begin the branches of the tree. Now if you look with me on row 16, we are going to go to the section where it says change to the smaller hook, and we're going to double crochet in the first 4 stitches of this section, working through both loops. 4 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now at this stage we're going to be working a series of chains and slip stitches, but we are only going to be working in the front loop. Okay, so the instructions say working in front loops only, slip stitch in the next stitch. So we go ahead and slip stitch in the next stitch, and then it says to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch like this. Okay, and then it says to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then slip stitch in the next stitch. So that's what we're going to do a total of 6 times. So we've already done this 1 time, so we're going to do it 5 more times. Chain 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, slip stitch in the next stitch, only working in the front loop, and then chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then slip stitch in the next, just like that. And we'll do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 single crochets, and then a slip stitch, and then a 5, I'm sorry, that was chains, and then 5 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and slip stitch. Okay, so let's stop and see what we're doing here. So you can see this is kind of forming an irregular, the irregular branches of a tree. So I'm going to do that until I have repeated that a total of 6 times. Okay, I've just finished working my 6 repeats of this, so let's just verify what we've done. We have the chain 7 and the chain 5, that's 1, the chain 7 and then chain 5, it's 2, there's a chain 7 and chain 5, that's 3, there's another one, that's 4, and 5, and 6. So I do have 6 repeats. After that, I'm going to work double crochets in the next 4, and these are going to be working through both loops. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And go ahead and put your stitch markers back in, just right like that. And I'm going to put the other one in on the other side. This is helping me more than I can say. I know you're getting tired of me saying it, but I really have a tendency to just barrel on through the pattern and forget little nuances like changing the hook size. So that just kind of reminds me to do that. So I'll go ahead and switch the hook out now. That will bring you to the first stitch marker. So let's go ahead and take that stitch marker out. And as it reminds us to switch our hooks to the smaller hook. Now we're going to be working double crochets in the first 4 stitches, working through both loops. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now for the next stitches, we are only going to be working in the remaining loop of the previous row, which was down here. You can see these. So what we're going to do now is we are going to work treble crochets in that remaining loop. So make sure we're working trebles, not doubles here. We're going to pick up that loop that was left from the slip stitch rows with the chains to help form the trees. So we're going to do this 13 times. I'm going to work this all the way through so that you can see how you can pick up this loop. I know that can be a little tricky. Okay. And this helps to form the backdrop for those chains, you know, as you can tell, are forming the branches on our Yule tree or our Christmas tree. Okay, just a few more here to go. And after we, again, one more. And I am going to verify the count just to make sure that I didn't skip any of these. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's always a good day when your stitch count works out. Now we're going to double crochet in the remaining double crochets, working through both of the loops. Okay, 2, 3, and 4. And let's go ahead and put that stitch marker back where it can remind us again. Put that one in. Okay, that brings us to our first stitch marker, which tells us to change our hook. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to remove the stitch marker and put it right back in. And the directions for row number 18 say to double crochet in the next 5 stitches. So we're working in that tree section and we're going to be working through the 2 loops at the top of the previous stitch. So we're going to do 5 double crochet, and this is 4 and 5. We'll be working in one of those trebles that we worked. Okay, so after we do that, we are going to work only in the front loop of the stitches for this next section. We're going to slip stitch in the next stitch, which is right here. Slip stitch. Now we're going to do something a little different. Instead of chaining 7, we're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then slip stitch in the front loop only of the next stitch. And then now we're going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then slip stitch in that next stitch, like so. Okay, we are going to do that a total of 5 times. Okay, last time we did that 6 times. We're only going to do it 5 times this time. So I'll go ahead and do that again with you. Chain 5. And then slip stitch, working in the front loop only of the next stitch. And then chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then slip stitch in that next stitch, working only in the front loop. Okay, so I've done that 1, 2 times, so do that 3 more times for a total of 5 repeats. Okay, let's just verify what we have. We should have a 5 chain and then a 7 chain. That's 1 repeat, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 repeats. After that, we're going to work double crochets in the next 5 double crochets, and that's working through both loops through the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's go ahead and take the time to move our stitch markers because they are serving us so well. Okay, and the stitch marker was a reminder to change the hooks again. Okay, now that we've come to our stitch marker, let's go ahead and change our hook. Remove the stitch marker, and the directions for row number 19 for this section say to double crochet in the next 5 stitches, and that will be working through both loops. Let's do double crochets 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now for this next section, we are going to be working in the remaining loop. Now this is actually 2 rows down. Okay, we're going to be working behind where we work the chains, and we're going to grab like the loop right here. Let's see where the first stitch is going to be here. Okay, so we're going to work treble crochets in the next 11 stitches, working in that remaining loop. Okay, I'll do a few of them with you. Okay, I just want to make sure that you can see where this loop is. Now this stitch is unusually large, but it's actually kind of making the difference between these 2 stitches here, the double crochets and the front post double crochets. Okay, this will all even out in the end, I promise. So go ahead and finish working those 11 stitches, treble crochets, working in that single loop. After working those trebles, I'm going to go ahead and verify 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we're good to go. Now I'm going to be back working in these double crochets, working through both loops. Go ahead and work 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Go ahead and take the time to remove our stitch markers and put them in the next row here. I'm going to go ahead and attach the one at the beginning also. Okay, and they are a reminder to switch the hooks back out again. Okay, now we're using our smaller hook and work to the tree section, and the directions say to double crochet in the next 6 stitches. Now this is going to be working through both of the loops of the double crochets. So we're going to double crochet in the next 6 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 more. 6. Okay, now for the chain portion, it says we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch, chain 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chains, and then slip stitch in the next stitch. Now we're only working in the front loop, remember, in this section. Now we're going to chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then slip stitch into the next stitch, working in the front loop only. And we're going to do that, let's see how many times, We're going to do that a total of 4 times. I'll do it one more time with you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then slip stitch in the front loop only of the next stitch, and then chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then slip stitch in the next stitch in the front loop only. Okay, so now that is actually 2 repeats. I'm going to go ahead and do that 2 more times. Now that I finished that section, let's go ahead and verify that we do have 4 repeats. There's a 7 chain and a 5 chain. That's 1, that's 2, 3, and 4. And as you can see, the tree is starting to take shape. It's starting to gradually getting smaller and smaller, and as we work more rows, you'll see that it will decrease and, you know, kind of go to the apex of the tree. Okay, now we're going to working in the both loops of the stitches. We're going to double crochet in the next, I believe it's 6 stitches. Yes, 6 stitches. 1, 2, let's bring it down into the viewfinder. 3, 4, 5, and let's go ahead and remove this stitch marker. And 6. And the stitch marker was there to remind me to change my hook, so I'm going to go ahead and change my hook to the larger size. After the 56 back post double crochets, that brings us to our stitch marker, which tells us that we need to change our hook. And let's go ahead and take out our stitch marker. And our instructions are to double crochet, and this is again working through both loops. Double crochet in the next 6 stitches, which would be the 6 double crochets from the previous row. That's 4, 5, 6. Let me verify to make sure that I do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. After that, the instructions say to treble crochet in the next 9 free loops. Now that's the loops that are left here worked when we worked in the front loop only with those slip stitches and the chains. So we'll go ahead and work 9 treble crochets working in that remaining loop. Hopefully you can see that there. So go ahead and work those. After working those 9 treble crochets in the remaining loop, make sure I have 9. Then we're going to work back in these double crochets up here and work 6 of those, working through both loops of the previous stitch. That's 3, 4, 5, and the last one with the stitch marker is 6. And go ahead and change the stitch marker, which tells us to change the hook. We're going to go ahead and change our hook out right now, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the stitch marker. And the directions for row 22 on the tree portion say to double crochet in the next 7 stitches, again working through both of those loops. 1, 2, 3. I'll go ahead and work the 7 stitches. After working those 7 double crochets, now we're just working in the front loop only, and we're going to work a slip stitch, and then we're going to chain 5 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Slip stitch in the next stitch, and now we're going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then slip stitch in that next stitch, working in the front loop only. And we're going to do that a total of 3 times. So we've just completed the 1 repeat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chains and a slip stitch. As you notice, the tree is getting thinner as we go up. And then we chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then do a slip stitch, and that's our second repeat. And now for the third repeat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, slip stitch in the front loop of the next stitch, and then chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then slip stitch in the next stitch. Okay, now we have, actually that stitch marker is in the wrong place. Forgive me for that. That should actually be over here, but I'm going to put that down for now. And we're going to work 7 double crochets working through both loops of the next 7 stitches. 1, 2. And those 7 double crochets should take you right to the beginning where you're going to continue working those 56 stitches with the cables. So go ahead and put your stitch markers back in. Let's go ahead and change out our crochet hook too, because that's why they're here, to remind us to do that. Okay, after working those 56 back post double crochets, we come to our stitch marker. Let's go ahead and change our hook to the smaller hook, remove our stitch marker, and we are going to double crochet working through both loops in the next 7 double crochets. After finishing those 7 double crochets, we're not going to be working in the remaining loop of the trebles. So get that first one there, and you can always find the first treble crochet that you work in, because that's where that last slip stitch was worked from the previous row. So go ahead and do treble crochets, and you're going to be working 7 of these. After those 7 treble crochets worked in that remaining loop, we're going to go back up and be working in the double crochets, working through both loops, and work 7 double crochets, and this should take you right to the stitch marker. Alright, that brings us to our stitch marker, which tells us to change our hooks, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the stitch marker. Now the directions for row 24 on the tree portion say to double crochet in the next 8 stitches, and again working through both loops, go ahead and work through the next 8 stitches using your double crochet. After working those 8 double crochets, now we're going to only be working in the front loop. We're going to slip stitch in the next stitch, and we're going to now chain, let's see, 7 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, slip stitch in the front loop only of the next stitch, and then we're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to slip stitch in the front loop only of the next stitch, and we only have to do that 2 times. So let's repeat it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chains, and then slip stitch in the front loop of the next stitch, and then chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and slip stitch in the front loop of the next. And so let's make sure we just have 1 repeat and then 2 repeats of that. Now we need to work 8 double crochets working through both loops of the next 8 stitches. So go ahead and work those. After working those 8 stitches, that last stitch should have been in the same place where the stitch marker was located. Let's go ahead and put those stitch markers back in. And since they're a reminder again to change the hooks, let's go ahead and change the hook side. That brings us to our stitch marker, which reminds us to change our hook. So let's go ahead and get our smaller hook. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the stitch marker. And the directions for row 25 of the tree portion is to double crochet in the next 8 stitches, and again this is working through both loops. So go ahead and crochet in those 8 stitches. After working those 8 double crochets, now we're ready to work our treble crochets in the remaining loop of the treble crochets down here. Remember, you can find the first one that you work in by finding out where that slip stitch was worked, and we're going to work it in the loop that's remaining. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to work 5 of these. So there should be 5 free loops. I'll just go ahead and work these with you. It's 3, 4, and 5. Let's stop and take a look at that. And then after that, we're going to go back to working up here, and we're going to work 8 double crochets working in both of the loops. So go ahead and work those, and the last one should be the stitch with the stitch marker. The last stitch was the one with the stitch marker, and so we can verify that we do have 8 stitches. Yes, I do. So we're going to go ahead and put that stitch marker back, and that last stitch worked, and that's going to remind me to change my hook size. After working those 56 stitches over the cables, make sure you do a visual check on that. Go ahead and change your hook size to the smaller one. Take out the stitch marker, and we're going to double crochet working through both loops in the next 9 stitches. After working those 9 double crochets, we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch. This is just working in the front loop only. Chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, slip stitch in the next stitch, working in the front loop only. Chain 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then slip stitch working in the front loop of the next stitch. And we only need to do 1 repeat of this because we're getting towards the top of the tree. And then double crochet working through both loops in the next 9 stitches. This should take you all the way to the stitch that has the stitch marker. That last stitch is worked where the stitch marker is, so let's go ahead and remove the stitch marker, and it reminds us to change our hook size. After those 56 back post double crochets, we come to our first stitch marker. Let's go ahead and change our hook to the smaller hook, remove the stitch marker, and we're going to crochet 1 double crochet in each of the next 9 stitches, working through both of those top loops. So go ahead and work those 9 double crochets. After working those 9 double crochets, we're going to be working in the remaining loop. And remember, find where that last slip stitch was worked, and the loop opposite that of that same stitch that it was worked in. Go ahead and work your treble crochet, and we're only going to need to work 3, 1 in each of the 3 free loops. Okay, after we finish that, then we're going to go back to working up on this row here. We're going to work 1, working through both loops, 1 double crochet in each of the next 9 stitches, and that should bring you to our stitch marker. After working that last double crochet in the same space with the stitch marker, go ahead, remove the stitch marker, put it back, and the top of that last stitch just worked, and let's go ahead and change our hook because that's why it's there. Now we get to the tree section of row 28, so it is time to change our hook. Now that we see that stitch marker, let's go ahead and remove the stitch marker, and the directions say to double crochet in the next 10 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead, and again, this is working through both loops. Go ahead and work a double crochet in each of the next 10 stitches. Okay, after working those 10 stitches, now what I'm going to show you right now is the only time you're going to do this. This is the apex or the top of the tree. So we're going to do a couple things in the same stitch. So just working in the front loop, we're going to slip stitch. We're going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now we're going to slip stitch right back in that same stitch. Okay, so we're going to have 2 slip stitches in the same stitch. Let's just kind of make sure that the top of the tree is going to be even. It's not going to be, off to the left or off to the right. Okay, after we do that, we're going to double crochet, working through both loops in the next 10 stitches. After crocheting those 10 double crochets, it brings us to the place where the stitch marker is, and we can go ahead and replace the stitch markers, put in the one that you just finished, and we're going to put it in the first double crochet of that 21 stitch. So after working those 56 back post double crochets, it's time for us to change the hook when we see that stitch marker. And let's go ahead and remove the stitch marker. I'm going to go ahead and put the double crochet, working through both loops. And for this row, we're going to double crochet in 10 stitches. I'm going to go ahead and put that stitch marker back. So go ahead and work those double crochet, working through both loops in the next 10 stitches. Now we're going to work a treble crochet in that one place where the 2 slip stitches were worked in the front loop. Well, let's work in the back loop here, or it's actually the front loop now, but work that treble crochet. And then after that, pardon my knot here. After that, we're going to go back to working in the top loops of the double crochets, and we're going to work a double crochet in each of the next 10 stitches, again working through both of the loops. That last double crochet will be worked same place where the stitch marker is, so let's go ahead and move that stitch marker up. And once again, please don't forget to change your hook. I was about to forget again. It seems to be more of a problem the more familiar you get with the pattern, and the faster, more comfortable you are with everything, the easier it is to forget. So don't forget to change to the larger size hook. Okay, for the next 6 rows, as you will be repeating rows 10 through 13 and then 10 and 11 again, you're basically going to be working just straight single crochet, of course changing the hook size, but just 21 single crochets through the center portion where the Christmas tree or the Yule tree is formed. And I'll see you in video number 2. God bless. Bye-bye.